we've heard so far about critical minerals and the opportunities there, some of the challenges. We've heard about the importance of investing into the midstream. We've heard about innovation. We just heard about battery innovation in this country and how we're a leader in that space as well. This panel is going to focus on OEMs and battery makers and the supply chain, particularly further downstream. We're the last panel, I think, before the fireside chat and the drinks, so we will keep the energy up. It's a really important conversation, and I'm really glad to be on the stage with these fine folks. This is a really interesting panel because we've got, Canadian innovative battery company. We've got a global leader in battery technologies that's chosen Canada, and of course we've got an OEM that has a 100-year history in this country that is living electrification in real time. So it's going to be a really, I think, fruitful conversation. I'm going to go down the line. I'm going to start with you, Khadija, and then go down the line, and just talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the supply chain from your perspective, both globally and in Canada, just to kick us off before we get into the conversation. So I'm just wondering what you're seeing from the perspective of Electria.
So, as you mentioned, like Electria is a Canadian innovator. It's a Canadian-built company. We've been in the Canada market since 1996. However, it's been hard to grow bigger. And in terms, like recently, over the last 7 years, I guess, it's been rapid growth. So there's more development in the supply chain in North America in general. Yet there's still some challenges. Like one of the main challenges still like to localize the minerals or the raw materials for the battery-grade raw materials. The other challenge facing is actually going into penetrating this very competitive market. Like knowing that battery supplier, we are competing with battery suppliers globally, like in Asia. This is a very hard competition for a North American battery company. So Electria, we are a vertically integrated company. We do our cells up to the packs. Mm-hmm. We do focus more into the technology, and we invest in R&D. So our main competitive edge, or what we focus on, our strategy is to differentiate ourselves in this competitive market with our technology. So we provide superior performance that can come with a premium price, of course. So it's hard to enter this, for instance, the EV passenger vehicles, where the price tag is very important. So rather, we focus on actually tapping the heavy-duty applications. So we are more into material handling equipment, electric buses, electric trucks, where the performance is very important. Mm-hmm. They need the longer-lasting batteries rather than the mileage or the price. Right. And that's our strategy. We're like to stabilize ourselves in this supply chain, but also to give Canada a competitive edge in the heavy-duty supply chain, EV landscape.
Terrific. Luc, what are you seeing from your perspective in terms of kind of big picture, how the supply chain is developing at Northvolt?
Well, Matthew, thank you for the question. Thank you for inviting me. I'm French, so I have a little bit of accent. I'm actually here since last July, for the project that we're launching in Quebec. My first trip to Canada was in 1978. That's a long time. I'm very proud to be here. I'm very proud to develop this project, and thanking the government of Quebec, thanking the government of Canada for the welcome, and also the communities and the partners. And we have a lot of partners today in this room that I talked to. The world is moving very fast. You've heard it before. It moved very fast in Europe. We are the first homegrown battery maker in Europe. I joined the company in 2017. That's very fresh. The company was only 30 people at that time. Today we have more than almost 6,000 people. We have raised a lot of money, and I think the point here is not to talk about size, but in terms of rapidity of the landscape. So I want to say today that this industry is going very fast because the world needs it. The world needs it because we need to decarbonize. Then this is the mission of Northvolt. We want to build the greenest battery on Earth. By 2030, we will decrease the carbon footprint of the batteries we produced from currently 90 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt to about 10. So it's 90% off by using clean energy. And in Canada, obviously, thanks to Hydro-Québec, we will be using green energy, and then the rest of the supply chain and the activities to decarbonize. Fundamentally, this is what we contribute to the world. In Canada, it's going to be producing batteries for about 1 million cars, electric cars, like our friends from PowerCo said earlier. So it's a very fast driven change. Thank you.
Terrific. Sarah?
So from the perspective of General Motors, I think we have been focused on a vertically integrated supply chain as we've been moving into the entire electric future for us. And we see a lot of that happening here in Canada, but I think that there are other factors as well that kind of factor into how we think about where we're going to invest and who we are going to partner with. And so we have pushed our partners to have a vision of zero waste. We've pushed our partners to have a vision of localized supply chains as well. We're a North American market, so we're subject to the USMCA. And on top of the USMCA, the United States has put pretty strenuous requirements for consumer incentives on EV incentives through the IRA, and has backed that up with substantial supports for investment into the United States specifically. So we've worked closely with the Canadian government, we've worked with the governments of Quebec and Ontario to ensure that Canada has a spot in that, because we believe in Canada, we believe in what is entailed when you start to invest in the supply chain in Canada. We have a regulatory framework that provides us with materials that we believe are ethical and sustainable and provide a real pathway to providing vehicles for the North American market that people are proud to drive. And so at the end of the day, we're a car company. We're trying to sell vehicles, and we're trying to sell vehicles that consumers are proud to drive, that they want to drive, and that are affordable to drive. And so everything that we do right now is focused on that, which goes back to that integrated supply chain. From the mine all the way through to the vehicle, we want to make sure that we have managed to put the right mix in of affordable yet sustainable product. And that's the spot that really Canada's been able to occupy. But I also want to underscore, it's not just Canada, right? It's a North American approach. Yep. And so all of this is done with the eye towards a broader North American market.
So I want to get back to the North American dynamic in a little bit, but you mentioned relationships first. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Luc and then Khadija a question, and then I'm going to come back to get the GM perspective. But, we hear a lot in the media that, this supply chain in Canada and North America and globally has to, develop more quickly for all the reasons that we know, sustainability, climate change, et cetera. But the reality, of course, that we're at the very beginning of this industrial curve. Like, this is new. And, I think we have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, and do it the right way. But it also occurs to me that, the industry itself, the automotive industry, is changing, and the vehicle industry is changing. And those relationships that a GM or a Toyota or whomever had are changing too. So I wanted to maybe start with Luc. Northvolt has been really successful in Europe in developing relationships with customers and with suppliers. And I wanted to get your insight into how that has occurred and what the perspective is there, and maybe lessons learned for the North American market.
So when we started from a blank sheet. We had 20 engineers, mainly coming from Japan. But we attracted the attention of car makers because of the need for batteries and the need for batteries made close to where cars are produced. Our first investors were BMW, and then came Audi, and then came Scania, or was it Scania before Audi? And immediately it was very clear that the relationship between a supplier like us would be radically different in the case where such car makers would invest in us. I mean, definitely it became a strategic relationship, not just because of the 40% cost that the battery represents on the car, but because all the innovation around this battery, all the powertrain, which is so critical to provide a product and an experience to you guys, to us. All this is radically changed. So the strategic relationship completely changed. And that's why today Volkswagen is about 20% of our shareholding, and then BMW remains, etc. So the relationship is completely strategic because they see access to a very critical component to the car's mission, and more can come from this first observation.
Terrific, thank you. And Khadija, I'll come to you now from an Electria perspective. How you think about developing relationships with your suppliers and with your customers?
So as a smaller company, so we've been around for a while. So we do reinitiate the older conversation, but we've been around where like the EV was not still a big thing. So we still were early, where like we had these partnerships or prototyping projects, but didn't go into market. But then like it was a challenge to start competing when the EVs started going into market. Then we had to redesign our business strategy, focus on the heavy-duty market. It was very hard to build the relationships. And then we understood that it's going to be hard to mature a relationship with an OEM. There's this difference in languages and terminology between the battery supplier and the automaker.
Right.
So we need to close this gap. There should be a lot of transparency between the partners. And as Luke mentioned, like strategic partnerships are the way to go. There's a lot of collaboration, a lot of trying to close the miscommunication gap there, but also like investing in time. We need to understand it's going to take time to actually reach the full relationship maturity. So now like Electria has, it took a couple of years to build a very strong OEM partnership with Raymond and the Toyota Material Handling Equipment. And now we are building on this existing relationship from what we learned, the lessons that we learned from that relationship, and we are trying to open new avenues into new sectors.
Right. And the common language piece is really important, right? Because
Exactly.
it's not necessarily given that newer companies or companies that may not be new but haven't been involved in the automotive industry have the same terminology, have the same standards, have
Yes.
the same, and that's what builds
Practices,
trust, right? So
Exactly, yeah.
absolutely. So I want to go back then to the GM perspective, and you use the term vertical integration. So maybe I have a sense of how this is thought of at your company, and I think a lot of OEMs. But of course, there was a time at the beginning of the automotive industry where it was all vertical integration because GM owned the rubber factory, you'd own the rubber plantation. And so, are we getting back to that in some way? And that is a bit of a loaded question. I don't mean it to be necessarily, but how are relationships thought of at GM and maybe at other OEMs? If you can speak to that.
Well, I mean, Luke hit on it in his part of the answer, where it really is a strategic relationship that we have with these suppliers. And a lot of that comes back to the level of connectivity that we have to have. It's not you are building a widget that we buy from you and then we put it in our car.
Right.
It's not working like that. It is something where we have a very distinct relationship that is central to a specific set of IP, and that becomes what goes into our vehicle, and so it becomes competitive. And so even though you see some companies partnering with multiple vehicle OEMs, in the end, all of what they do within the context of their relationship with General Motors belongs to, that's distinct. It's General Motors, and it goes into those vehicles. And so I think that what we see, and Luke spoke to this earlier as well, kind of the speed of which everything is evolving. One of the things that is evolving is how we draw up these contracts, how we create these relationships. That's also something that's very much nascent, but also evolving. And so we see a slight difference in every single agreement that we start entering into with different suppliers at different stages in the processing, right? From the minerals to the processing of the minerals to when we start to get into CAM and we start to get into cathodes, and once we our anodes, once we move through all of those, every single relationship needs to be accounted for, and there's a level of proprietary IP there that makes the vehicles competitive in the marketplace. So I think that's a lot of what you see within what we're doing right now, and that means that the relationships are very deep within all of these different in all these different companies in the end. So it's not just a sales relationship like it was in the past. It is a sitting down and figuring out what it is that you're going to do that I'm going to then help you invest in and eventually purchase from you. So that's fundamentally the change that we've seen.
So let's then sort of turn our focus a little bit more broadly to North America. Each of you occupy a different place along I guess, the continuum here. But a commonality would be that you operate in Canada and therefore you operate in North America, because you can't escape the fact that this is a continental play. I'm wondering if you can maybe, Khadija, I'll start with you, to speak to Electrivia's perspective on the North American variables at play and how you're approaching that. I know that you've opened up a facility in New York State, for example, and what sort of drove that decisioning and how you kind of retain the Canadianness of all of this.
So, as you mentioned, our first manufacturing capability actually is in Mississauga, Ontario. But like with the increased demand, so there was an increased need for an immediate expansion. So for that expansion, it had to happen either in Canada. We wanted to keep it North American. Most of our customers are U.S. based, for instance, but we had to keep our supply chain localized. That was a major thing for us with all that geopolitical tension worldwide. Supply chain was so affected in the past few years, so we tried to localize as much as we can. For instance, now in our battery products, we have more than 60 or 70% of the components that go in the battery are from Canadian suppliers.
Is that right?
It just provides us more stability for our products. We control the timelines, we control the quality. There are still some parts where we have to get it offshore, but like hopefully in the future, we are building connections for the future in North America. Now the other, in terms of the expansion, finance is very important for us. When we try to expand that big, we need access to finances. So we did leverage a lot of the Canadian government, like there's federal and provincial support. We like Engine, IRAP, and SDTC. We had like 3 successful projects with Engine in the past 2 years. It helped a lot in advancing and streamlining our processes in Canada. So we included advanced manufacturing tools in the Canadian facility. But still, for a major gigafactory, we had to build it in the US. And that's mainly to tap on the IRA incentives, where it can cover for this major investment.
I may come back to you and ask for your thoughts on what Canada can do to compete there. But before we go there, Luc, if you can maybe talk about how Northvolt is thinking about, new to Canada, a philosophy on building out a supply chain in Canada, but again, Canada is part of North America. And so what your thoughts are vis-a-vis kind of the North American play.
So obviously we want to produce cells here. We want to produce cells with North American content, technology, particularly Canada and particularly Quebec. Canada and Quebec are very well endowed in all the materials, component technology that we need to implement in this. So we will localize very rapidly. Initially, the first cell we are going to launch in 26 is a cell that's being currently developed in Sweden. I think Peter is my colleague and is very into this. We will use some of the components from North America already, because when we develop cells in Sweden, we use the best materials and components we can to achieve what we provide to our customers. So this is going to be a first cell which is going to be partially localized but not fully localized, and we need to pull all the ecosystem here in Canada and North America to get to the level where we can compete against the Asians. This is hard in certain cases, easier in others, but let's talk, for instance, on equipments. Production equipments are extremely critical to produce the cells. Production equipment today are mainly coming from Asia. We have localized some of the very sophisticated equipments in Europe. It takes 5 to 6 years in order to get to a prototype, get to a pilot line, and get to the level where we can have a local supplier that can provide a line which is several hundred millions. And we need many of those. And we're not the only ones. So this is a critical area where we need to pull very early, even though it might take years, so that by 2030, 32, we have a complete technologies here localized. So it's essential that everyone gets a roadmap, gets the vision of where we want to go, so that everyone can have a decision to take. Do I want to go to this length of prototyping, investing, validation, and collaboration, which is not going to give me a immediate turnover, but this is what we want to do. We want to localize product process, and of course that's for the North American car makers.
So Sarah, of course, GM it's a U.S. company, but it's a North American company. And GM Canada, as I said before, 100 years, I think. And so
Over that, yeah.
more than that.
More than that.
Okay, sorry, more than that. And I guess the question to you would be then, when you're thinking with your GM Canada cap on, where you see this expanding to. So, what is Canada's role within North America from a GM perspective? And how do we make our supply chain more competitive globally?
I think it's up to Canada. And really, I think it's important, as you note, that General Motors is a North American company. It is headquartered in Detroit. Inside the company, there are people who wake up every day and think about engineering, who think about battery chemistry, who think about autonomous vehicles, and then there's me, who wakes up every morning and thinks about Canada. And I think that's the more people that I can line up on my side to hear about what Canada has to offer, the better off I am, and the better I can do my job. So, when you ask where GM sees itself in Canada, it depends on what's available to us. And so I think we have a traditional manufacturing footprint in this country that's starting to transition. We've got EV drive units going into our St. Catharines propulsion plant. We have the BrightDrop facility at CAMI. We have a battery assembly plant that's soon to open at CAMI to support the BrightDrop and also for export, for some of those packs being exported down to the United States. And we've got the investment in Quebec. To me, that's the tip of the iceberg, right? And what I would really, and I think what the company wants to see is the potential in Bécancour for that project, which is now a CAM facility, to be built out to build an entire ecosystem from extraction all the way through to processing, and then at some point, someone else earlier said that their dream is to drive an electric vehicle that's that is Canadian, truly Canadian. My dream is that every vehicle that General Motors makes has a piece of Canada in it. And so I think that really the question then becomes, how can Canada step up to the plate? And there are questions there that need to be answered by the federal government, by provincial government, by utilities, by the workforce, by the universities, and by us, the companies. But it has to be a joint effort. We all have to work together on this, and we have to see each other as trusted partners throughout it.
So I'm going to give you a few minutes before I put you on the spot, all of you, because my last question is going to touch on that and what we can do. So you can think about that in the back of your minds. But before we get there, we need to build the supply chain in Canada, in North America, globally, for all the reasons we know, right? Sustainability, industrial evolution, jobs. So there's also a right way of building a supply chain. And I want to get your thoughts on what good looks like in that sense. Like, what's the right way of doing this for your companies? And maybe I'll start with you, Sarah, and I'll go down the line this way.
The right way of doing this for our companies. I think we're on it. I think we're on that track. And that means, from the very beginning, and many of you were here this morning and heard Simon talk about the work that we did from the very beginning with the communities in Bécancour as we moved into that area, and we moved into a new investment with a new partner. And we've been in Quebec before, but this was different. And the relationships are different, and really focusing on how we do anything is how we do everything. So making sure that we have good relationships with all of the stakeholders in the areas that we're operating, ensuring that we're doing things that are focused on zero waste, which is a goal. And not only is that a goal, but it is a stated goal of General Motors that all of our facilities are using renewable energy only by 2035. Right. And to be honest, the United States has already secured enough renewable energy for those facilities that GM United States will meet that target 10 years before the date that we've been provided. So to me, I took that as a challenge. Mm-hmm. How do I get Canada to have 100% renewable energy sources for all of our facilities by 2025 as well? So these are the things that we're focused on. Because I think, again, a lot of the conversation today has been, how do we do this right? How do we do this in a way that is sustainable in the long term, that honors the indigenous relationships that we have really fought to return to in this country, and that doesn't give up any space on kind of the overall value superiority of what it is we have to offer here. And I think that all has to happen hand in hand with every aspect of government and stakeholder that we work with. And that's our goal, and that's how we're operating.
That's really helpful. And Luc, you mentioned renewable power, presumably as one of the reasons that Northvolt was interested in Quebec in the first place. I guess the same question to you. What does good look like for you when it comes to building out the supply chain? What's the right way of doing this?
I'm absolutely convinced that without the right people, the supply chain is not going to be taking off, because we are in a situation where there is not much experience in battery not experience in manufacturing, not much experience in battery manufacturing for sure. Mm-hmm. We need to attract talent. We need to be attractive. We need to exhilarate. We need to provide what the youth are after, which is to change the world. So our mission is extremely important when we talk to students and to new hires, because this is what makes it interesting to go and work with us. Last year, we hired 2,500 people in Sweden. We are 130 nationalities. We had 120,000 applications. I hope that this is going to be the case, not only for me, but all of us who are working in this industry. But we need to be very convincing on what we actually want the youth to do for us. So we need to explain what we do. We need to explain it to our families, to our friends. And with this, we will have people interested to go into the training and to come to be interviewed and to join us in a way where the actual sector is created and is moving. It is short term. I'm having discussions with all universities in Canada, and also with technical schools. It's one thing to explain what the programs can be, what the training plan can be, but it's another thing to attract people to come to study for that purpose. So I'm absolutely convinced the number one topic and my number one focus is to get this industry attractive, get it to learn, and get to work for all of us.
That's really helpful. And just to, maybe, I won't ask the question, but the observation, 2,000 people in Sweden, it's a lot of people on a quick ramp up, right?
In one area.
In one area. Mm-hmm. So, it can be done. I'm not going to claim to know the Swedish labor market, but, at the same time, I don't know if there's any comment you want to make on that and how quickly, how easy it was to find the people.
I think it's there is some people who are coming from other industries, but they take it like this: the chemical industry has lost its lackluster because of the oil stains. But I think that now with the chemicals associated or necessary for the battery, the game is changing. So there is a new generation of chemists, and we've seen in all of you the brilliant examples. New generation of chemists. We have many needs in mechatronics, AI, because all these huge factories are creating a humongous pile of information we need to treat in real time. So my colleagues are talking to different events on how we structure all this data. It's another world in itself. This is interesting for the youth, and this is interesting for all of us. It's absolutely mind-blowing what the innovation ripples are going to make for those who come into this.
That's helpful. So Khadija, I just want to sort of take up on that question about kind of what the right way of building a supply chain is for you and for Electria.
Yeah, so I have to agree with Luke, like actually securing the talent or growing the talent pool in Canada. This is hiring well-equipped people with the skills needed in the EV, in the battery production. It's very challenging currently. That's because it's not available. So there should be a lot of investment in building this talent pool. But not only building the tool, this can happen with the collaboration between industries and the educational institutes. We're already collaborating. We have a co-op program with University of Waterloo. So we always have co-ops coming from the University of Waterloo. At the end of their studies, they are hired by the company.
Right.
So this is working. The other problem is like, how would you attract them to stay in Canada while there is like other markets they can go to? So it's not only like developing the talent, but also to secure the talent to stay here.
So this leads me to the question that might put you on the spot. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But the question really is, if we could remove one barrier, right? If there's one thing that we could do that really accelerates this, it catalyzes this supply chain from a manufacturing point of view. I mean, it could go further upstream if you'd like, but what would it be? And maybe it is talent. Maybe it's something else. But is there a fix that you could see that would just that opens up the door to so many things? Duke, I'll start with you, and then Sarah, and then Khadija.
What we've seen in Sweden with this very fast growth of a gigafactory in a city of 40,000 people is that the urban planning is essential so that all the pieces come together. So we need housing, we need health services, we need mobility, we need transport, or we need roads and we need buses. So simple just to list up. But all of this comes from other stakeholders, developers building houses, the city deciding to create roads, put the sewage, the water, etc. So all of this change needs to be properly planned in order to give the proper vision, to give the proper inputs to all these different stakeholders that come to work together for that change that happens. I think that Canada, in my view, needs to get more structured, gets to work the different levels of the government, the different agencies, so that this sectorial planning, this urban planning that is necessary for the sector to grow, to work this harder. I think I would be more polite if I would be talking to I would say the mayor of Skellefteå in Sweden 5 years ago. But now, with the experience we've had, if we are too polite until too late, then it's going to be a crunch. It's not going to happen. So all of these efforts, the financing, the technology, your decisions as entrepreneurs might be wasted. So my lessons, the lessons I can share today is that we need to be taking this very seriously. The structural, the cross-functional collaboration between the different levels of government, local, central, federal, and the industry associations to tackle these difficult challenges that are not central but are extremely important to solve for it to happen.
Terrific, thank you. Sarah, same question.
Well, I would just turn it a little bit to say that I think that the number one challenge at the moment is the politicalization of electric vehicles and the electric vehicle supply chain. And that's what I worry about the most, is the more we politicize it, the more it becomes kind of you're either on the side of EVs or you're not.
Right.
The harder it comes for all of us to do the work that we really desperately need to do in order to ensure that this endeavor is a success. And I don't think anybody should be confused about it. We have to all be successful at this.
Yep.
And so, you know, the more it becomes political, whether that's a discussion on investment supports, whether it's a discussion on the adoption of EVs and all of those things that come into place, it needs to be a strategic discussion that rises above the political noise.
Yeah, that's helpful. And Khadija, before I'll just say, if you've got a question, we'll have a couple minutes, so get up to the mics now. But Khadija, same question. You've got the final point to fix this whole thing.
I think like the main point to build it like a stable supply chain and fast, it's down to finances. Like Canada has to step it up a little bit when it comes to supporting Canadian-made products. Have some incentives for Canadian content. It has to have more support for Canadian collaboration, more collaboration between the Canadian players. That will make things move faster.
Right, terrific. Thank you. I do see questions. I'm sure the lights are right in the eyes. But I do see somebody standing up over there. Please go ahead.
Quick question. I'll try to make it quick. Farhad Panau from RBC Climate Action Institute. We actually released a report yesterday, and we were on Canada's climate action that's happening now. So we tracked some of the investments that have been happening in Canada, and we saw billions of dollars coming into auto industry, most primarily into battery manufacturing. And I think, Sarah, you mentioned something along the lines that we need to build Canadian, tie a knot on the Canadian manufacturing supply chains. And then there was themes of local supply chains as well. So, but the resources are not infinite. So I was wondering is there a value proposition to expand on the Canadian auto manufacturing or the assembly, or going deeper and down into the battery manufacturing space?
So I think the question is the value proposition for Canada in the further downstream in the assembly side, or is there also value going further upstream, batteries, but may I take that a bit further, you know, further in the midstream and even in upstream? I think that's a fair...
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sarah, do you want to start with that?
I think the value proposition for Canada begins in the midstream and goes out both directions from there. So I would say that, you know, that the investments that we see in Bécancour are really focused on kind of midstream processing. But what that enables is significant investment to move into the upstream and into the downstream. And so, you know, we've got an all of supply chain approach here for us. We've, you know, all the way through to the finished vehicles. That's the goal. But I think that the right move strategically is to ensure that we have that midstream processing so we don't find that we have the same problem that we've had in the past with other natural resource-based industries where you spend a lot of time on extraction and a lot of money on extraction and then don't have the refining capacity.
Yep.
So we really need to ensure that we have that midstream in place.
Terrific. Luc, do you have an opinion?
I'd like to see a car maker come, but I think the more our experience in making batteries, where we do the cathode active material because we invest in that for us, the cell assembly, the module and pack, and the recycling gives us a very strong understanding of the delicate balance on the technologies in each step. So we are not siloed because we decided to be integrated. So that's a specific challenge. But I think the more we are integrated, I mean, as a country, for instance, the more we are integrated and the more we learn on the effects of one stage to another in order to optimize cost, to optimize the performance, to optimize the use of resources. So that's my view, I think.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks. Khadija, do you have a thought?
I actually agree with Sarah. I think the midstream is very important because it opens the avenues for the upstream and downstream.
Sure.
So more investment in that would be very helpful in Canada.
I don't know if anybody else has a question. I would just to kind of reiterate that we released a report in December, and we heard it here today. You know, midstream is so important, and it really is a building block. And that was one of the things that 20 CEOs across all the segments in the supply chain, from critical minerals through to battery materials and technologies to OEMs, sort of said, like, this is a real focus that Canada needs to take seriously. And the other thing was, like, start counting what it is we're trying to do, right? Like, let's put some KPIs in here. What does good look like for the country? And let's build out from there. Because at the moment we're sort of really just throwing things at a wall, and some of them are sticking and sticking really, really well, and others just aren't, because we don't know what it is we're trying to accomplish sometimes. So that's an important takeaway for me. Unless somebody else has a question, we're about time. So I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank the organizers, and thank you all for listening so attentively.
Thank you.
Thank you.